Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm your mayor, Heath Sheeran, and the host of this podcast. We are live at Virginia Beach at the PIA Virginia DC Conference. And I'm having such a good time hanging out with my new friends here. And I've got a new friend sitting here with me. And before we get into that, my sponsors are Smart Choice, the fastest growing agency network, hands down, ladies and gentlemen. They are wonderful to work with. They have 10,000 agencies across the country working with them. And I saw them here at this conference this week, just yesterday at the trade fair, and we had a great conversation, and agents were flocking all over their booth wanting to meet them and say hi. Make sure you go to their website and check it out. $11 billion in written premium, 10,000 agencies, and so many fun people to work with, from Virginia to California to everything in between, and great people. SmartChoiceAgents.com. Also, my good friends over at Canopy Connect. Go to usecanopy.com/Heath. Get a demo, get a discount, do all the things. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan, what's up, brother? You say in Virginia Beach or at Virginia Beach? I don't know.
I think at.
Okay. We'll go with at Virginia Beach at the PIA DC Conference. And I'm so glad you guys are here. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited, and the idea itself is great.
Yeah.
Information sharing is more critical than ever.
Heck yeah.
Especially with independent agencies, and the sort of the passing of the torch. There's a huge sort of perpetuation issue we have as an industry.
Huge.
There's a lot of new people coming in, and we need centralized sources of information.
100%.
Education.
You were here at the PIA DC Conference, and we the theme here is Rock the Block, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to throw a block party and you had to invite, who would be 3 people dead or alive that you would have to be at that block party? Who would be the 3 people that you would invite to this block party?
Oh man,
dead or alive?
That is a doozy of a question. Let's see. It would have to be. See, now I'm a thinker, right? So
we can edit out the thinking part with the light bulb on there.
Probably Prince.
Okay, awesome. You're a Prince guy.
I'm a Prince guy, but he's also a party animal.
Yeah, he is.
And then let's see. Jimi Hendrix.
Nice. So you're a music guy too.
Bit of a music guy. Now let's pull something from history. Gandhi. That'd be kind of cool.
What a cool mix.
Partying with Gandhi.
Heck yeah, dude. I
don't
know
how much fun he'd be, but I think he'd bring the vibes.
Oh, he'd definitely bring the vibes.
Yeah.
The potheads could have a good conversation with him at your party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, that'd be cool. That's a good one. I like that. I've had some very interesting answers in that. All right. Now, again, the other piece of this conference, besides the decades and the generations of the block party part, is technology. And we're talking about that some tomorrow, and some stuff that I'm talking about tomorrow. So what is one piece of technology you cannot live without, whether it's in your professional or personal life?
Believe it or not, it is AI.
Yeah.
And I use it immensely. I mean, I use it for a lot of different things. From a work perspective, it's a very easy way to abstract policies and compare forms.
Nice.
So I can have it convert essentially any one of our quotes. I can have it merge the quotes, convert it into a company proposal using our letterhead.
Yeah.
Canva is very helpful. If you don't know what Canva is, it's a great tool for developing material.
Oh, yeah.
But AI, I mean, my first iteration of using this about 2 years ago, they're 9 and 7 now, but when they're like, 6 and 4,
yeah,
I had ChatGPT write me bedtime stories.
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, write me a 800 to 1,000 word story regarding Prince Liam and Ari storming the castle and fighting off the evil dragon to save their beautiful mother, Queen Jessica, right? And
that is awesome.
And spit it out, and kids started writing their stories about. Add the ogre dad, Alan Hudson. Name him Alan. Ogre,
dude, that is hilarious. I love that.
I'll whip that up real quick. So, Heath mentioned my name's Alan Hudson. I'm with agency called Community Risk Advisors that I founded about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
The day before the hard market and everything blew up.
Yeah.
So it's been exciting. It's been a challenge. been in the business long enough to not sort of stumble through, I think, what a lot of startup insurance agents might without prior knowledge. But it was a grind, and we made it.
You are a man after my own heart. I'm a man. When I owned an agency, I was a man who was all about his niches, all about specialization. And I had several different unique risks that I wrote. And so, from what I understand, you've tried to focus a little bit of that on your agency. First of all, let's back up a little bit and tell me, was that something when you started the agency you went into it with that focus, or you realized after you started, like, oh, I need to specialize?
Great questions. And I don't know how much time we have, but there's a couple of factors that went into it, right? So I had previously in my other roles in the insurance world focused and produced sort of what my carrier partners were finding the most success in.
Yeah.
And I encourage, like all agencies, to partner with their carriers and make sure that they're aware of the carrier's most recent appetite, what they're having the most success with.
Sure.
And then focus on that. Because if you give your new producer, who might not be a consultative sales expert insurance guy yet, if you give them a hit list and you are confident that if the opportunity is given, you're going to be able to deliver a better product or a more affordable product, that agent might not be able to talk like, the bells and whistles, but he'll be able to, or he or she, you can hear it in their voice, the inflection, when they feel confident, knowing that if you give them an opportunity, they can deliver something. That's something that you have to know, and you have to. It's tremendously important. But to answer your question about the niche markets, with all this M&A going on, we've been talking actually at PIA's, in the board meeting about the M&A activity and how that's affected the smaller agencies or independent agents that haven't sold. And I think one thing that is happening is there is going to be a resurgence in demand for independent insurance agents, because as these companies, these M&A companies, continue to grow, they're essentially outsourcing anything that's not generating $25K in revenue to a
100%.
service center. And I don't know about you, but I could use a $200,000 premium account.
Yeah.
I would love that, So
all day long.
So we're seeing attrition, and a lot more businesses and individuals, consumers, Googling like insurance agents near me, because the one thing they're missing since the acquisition is accountability and the ability to call someone who might actually care or be accountable to them. So, but I started in this niche because I also felt like, in order to compete with the big 4, the big 10 brokers on mid-size and larger accounts, I needed to say that I specialized in something.
Yeah.
So I genuinely did need to specialize in something. To be able to know a product, the ins and outs, the carrier appetites for the product, is instrumental, not just in terms of selling and advising clients, but I'm able to build up an agency that has staff that are specialized.
Yeah.
That's huge from an overhead and a margin perspective, because, if you're trying to bring on an account manager and train an account manager to be a generalist, you're asking a lot.
A whole lot.
You're asking them to quote restaurants and mechanic shops and warehouses and manufacturers. And that's just, that's too much.
Well, not to mention if somebody comes in and needs home and auto, you're like, oh, by the way, do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then they got to understand personal lines, commercial lines. They got to understand, different types of risk. And there's no way, I've always thought that, and there was conversation in the past that, I used to have was like, when you have a headache, you go to a specific doctor.
Yeah.
When you have cancer, you go to a different specific doctor. When you have a heart issue, you go to a specific doctor for the heart issue. When you go to foot, you have a foot issue, you go to a podiatrist, you don't go to a cardiologist.
Correct. Main street agencies,
right. Yep.
In the rural and suburban communities, will always have a spot, when it mentioned accountability, because then they'll also have those carriers that have a good general appetite, and they take on a lot of the underwriting load and lift, compared to carriers that are more specialized or focused on larger business. We're 100% commercial. And a specialization has allowed us to be able to talk more intelligently from a consumer-facing perspective, but also on the back-end support. The fact that we have the same 8 applications for the same 5 products means you don't need to be an underwriting guru. You can actually, and we do, outsource a considerable amount of what we call our placement team. So our placement team is overseas. And you might think, well, wait a minute, you got people quoting like all kinds of crazy. No, they're not. They're basically putting in 20 D&O applications through the same portal for the same product. So there's not an E&O exposure from my perspective. Of course, you've got to review the proposals and quotes. But in terms of generating, I don't want to be paying someone 70, 80 grand to 2-finger type 20 D&O applications into the same system.
Right.
And
that's where your offshore people do that. Now,
Well, so because so much of what we do is program specific, we don't have a lot of downloads. So we do need to train our internal and outsourced people in AMS, everything.
But
it's easy. I mean, it's great. That's the one thing I love about AMS. It's like everything you need, but none of the extra crap you don't.
Exactly.
I'm not selling life and benefits and home and auto. Like AMS is a great option, not just for any agency, but especially an agency that is focused and trying to make sure that they're doing things efficiently, have easy access to the data they need, but don't have to parse through all the stuff that they don't.
Right.
And I love the activity and suspense feature. I always have. That was a big decision on my part because I need to be able to run suspense reports from all my people to make sure.
Let's go back to that accountability piece.
It's great. It's wonderful, especially when you got 13 different people and quoting 100%. Yeah, so it's been a great ride, and I got to learn so much throughout my career that it's a tough risk to take, but it's well worth it, and I think there is a resurgence in support generally. Yeah. For independent, not just independent agents, independent restaurants, independent retailers, independent candle makers. I think people are tired of just buying stuff out of the box from China. Or calling a 1-800 number to file a claim. They need someone that can help walk them through the process and just make them feel special, I think.
So, in that, as you mentioned earlier, being such a specialized place, you're doing a lot more E&S type business or a lot more non-standard type business. Yeah. Is there one, you don't have to say name, but
it's admitted. It's mostly admitted, but the problem is it's like, it's a specialized product.
Sure.
Through an MGA or an MGU. And so
you have multiple MGAs or MGAs that you use or MGUs, or you use just one. So you're not doing a lot of shopping as far as different underwriters. You're able to build relationships with those underwriters, or do you have multiple MGAs across?
We have multiple MGAs across multiple products, all competing to some extent for the business. But they don't have IVANs, and they don't do direct bill. So it's all agency bill. It is a little manual, but
but that's where you need to have those processes and those procedures. That's where you need to have your offshore people. Mm-hmm. So I get that. That makes sense. Yeah.
And the nice thing about agency bill is it's all 100% paid in full. So I don't have to worry about like cash basis. A lot of my accounting is accrual. So it's convenient. And the industry that I serve understands those nuances and expects to pay in full.
So if you're talking to someone listening right now in the audience, it's like, man, I really do want to niche down and get into a particular, niche or micro niche or whatnot. As you talked about, sharing to that next generation coming up or talking about the perpetuating, things like that. What would you tell them? What would be some advice if they're like, where do I start? Whether they're green or they've had a book for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, so if you had a book for 10 years and you have been specializing, or you're a generalist and you're looking to specialize, and or if you're new, kind of going back full circle to my original I don't want to say point, but observation that I made was, focus on what your carriers want the most.
Yeah.
And now that evolves, right? Because, carriers go green light on this SIC code
Well, then 2 years later, they can say, we're off.
Yeah, we're full, or like, we got to tweak some things.
100%.
And it happens. So, I do have a couple of specializations. The one I kind of focus on most, which is, HAB real estate. It's a little different market than it was 7 or 8 years ago. But, in a year or two, when the market is hot and the carrier's light's green, you're developing a reputation within that market. You're hitting some early wins. You start to connect the dots. And then, every year I would encourage, and we do reach out to all of our carrier partners and say, what do you want most? What have you had the most success with? Yeah. And that changes every 6 months. But then in addition to our specialization, our kind of like core, we're focusing, I've insisted our producers focus at least half of their time on what our next niche could be.
100%.
With the success.
But what I like what you said there was the proactive approach. Instead of, I was a carrier rep for 10 years. And I would go in, I'd bring our hit list in, and I would bring in, our appetite guide, and I would slide that across the desk. And then I would notice there's meetings that would happen because over the next 3 or 4 weeks, our underwriters would be inundated with those submissions. Where you guys are going in proactively to those carrier reps and saying, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
Instead of them telling you what they want, then you kind of ask them, you kind of come with a plan, or you might even go in and say, we're writing these 3 niches. Is there a place in your appetite guide for that? Yeah. So I think that proactive approach, agents that listen to this, is a positive move. And then carriers, if an agent comes to you and says, what are you wanting to write? I don't think it's a bad move. Say, hey, wait a minute, let's take the information that you guys, what are you writing now? What's going on? Maybe you could work with them and partner up and do a specialization or a niche with that carrier. And I'm sure you guys have had some experience with that as well, either on the E&S side or admitted markets or whatnot.
Yeah. No, our carrier partners are happy to throw some marketing dollars at co-branding a booth at an expo.
Heck yeah.
Help subsidizing that cost of penetrating that market early. One thing you said was, spot on as well. When it comes to approaching the carrier versus the carrier approaching you, a reactive versus a proactive approach.
Yes.
Proactive approach, when you have that conversation with the carrier and they tell you we're having a lot of success with and we want A, B, and C, you're creating an extra level of accountability and an expectation that when you do come back with A, B, and C, dutifully, that they are more likely, they still have to 100%. Underwrite it and make sure it's not a lemon, but, loss runs are good. It is in that exposure basis box, then they need to. I think they'll feel more compelled to sharpen their pencil and deliver.
Well, then it feels more like a partnership instead of this carrier conversation saying from the carrier side of, hey, we haven't written a lot of premium yet. What's going on with you guys? Or from you guys, instead of saying, hey, we've submitted 1,000 things to you and you haven't written any of them.
Yeah.
Now it's more of a cohesive conversation. It's more of a partnership of saying, hey, we're doing this together. They might say, hey, we'll do this niche and we'll accept, 10 submissions a month from you or whatever it might be. That way you kind of can game plan. Okay, we'll give them the best 10 or the worst 10 or whatever they want.
Yeah.
And then you guys can kind of feel that out. And then the next month or the next quarter, you can say, okay, we sent you 10. Y'all wrote 5 of them. We're doing good.
Yeah.
Or we sent you 10, you wrote 0. Maybe we should pass on instead of us. So I think there's a lot of things to go with that. I think you're doing some pretty interesting things there to developing that niche with your carriers.
It is, and it's carrier specific, isn't it? Because I think there's actually I see a split in the future where it becomes like an us versus them. In other words, I see mutuals and regionals making an extra effort to appoint new insurance agencies and support independent insurance agents. And then I see some other carriers that you would think they used to appoint everyone with a heartbeat, and now they're not appointing anyone new, and they haven't for years. And they're focused more on national and, but that's not the point I was trying to make. There was your point about the carrier appetites, right? Some carriers, mostly I think the mutuals and the regionals, still have the traditional underwriting model. In other words, the underwriter is respected as an underwriter. They're given certain guidelines, but they're also given the authority to make decisions. That is something you really, that approach works with those kinds of carriers. Then you get the other carriers that say, like, we write everything, but anything you submit to them is going to get screened, filtered, poked, prodded until you realize that oh yeah, they're writing, well, let's just say something super scary, prisons, but only prisons that are for one-time offenders and have certain, like basically there's no such thing as a prison that exists that fits their model.
100%.
And so you send 100 submissions in, to your point, and you get like 1 or 2 quotes, and then they're looking at you like you're the bad guy. It's like,
100%. So that partnership makes a huge difference. And
partnership's huge.
We're all about partnership at
it's efficient
as well. It's efficient.
You can't I can't spend time submitting 100 and expecting
100%. No, I agree. Which is where technology comes in. I know you're a tech guy. Whether it's raters, whether it's your AMS, your CRMs, all those types of things. Your offshore, staff, overseas. I think if you can get all those people in a cohesive place, I mean that's where a lot of that comes into play to help you to be efficient because. With 13 people, there's a lot of human error that could happen there. But if you've got some automation, you've got some technology, you've got AI, you got whatever it is working for you behind the scenes, that only makes you that's like almost having 3 other employees.
That's why the value of your platform and the value of being like a member of PIA is more instrumental and it's more impactful than ever. Because to 100%. Your point with the technology, like I could throw out 5 nuggets right here in 5 minutes of technology that I guarantee 90% of your viewers have never heard of. And the moment they pick it up, they're going to be like, wow.
What? Yeah, exactly.
Holy I didn't know, I mean, whether it's Monday.com as a CRM, and I'm not trying to plug anyone in particular.
Sure.
But there's an online rating tool where you can build your own algorithms. And I don't mean complicated, but like building values or building premiums are basically the value divided by 100 times the rate. GLs, either payroll, sales. And if you specialize in something, you can get, with benchmark information, a pretty good idea of what a fire-resistive, 5-story, 30-unit condo in Virginia Beach is going to run. And then you can build your own custom rating tools and embed them on your website. It's down right now for, we're updating it, but my clients or my prospective clients at any time can go onto our website and quote their own packages, D&O, crime, everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and we're just putting all that data in the back end. Now, it's not guaranteeing anything. But it's not
carrier specific.
Nope, it's not carrier specific. But what it's doing is we have these tables that say carrier A, B, and C's rate for buildings between 20 and 30 million, 30 and 40 million. This construction class, sprinklered or unsprinklered, generates this rate. One of these 3 carriers will generate that rate. And so we plug that rate into the rater. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's very cool. Okay, so quick question as we we start wrapping up a little bit. What's the first app you look at when you open your phone?
Trading View.
Trading View. Okay.
Yeah. So
like stock trading?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a fantasy football thing or
I'm a bit of a degen. I trade.
Okay.
Trade a bit on the side.
Awesome.
Check the stocks.
The whole
that's
thing.
Setting the tone.
I
know what the headlines are going to be based on like pre-market.
There you go.
SPY.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for being here. Alan, thank you for hanging out with us. Guys.
Thank you, Heath.
Yeah, I'll see you guys pretty soon at my next conference. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next one.
Yep.
Bro, dude, thank you.
Yeah, man, thank you.
That was fun, man. I appreciate it. That was some good answers, man. I hadn't thought about some of that stuff, and I need to talk to you more about that. About that rating thing. Yeah, because there's that rating software you're talking about. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's all.